Welcome to Teams Transformed, the podcast for people who want to see real team transformation.
For courageous coaches, curious leaders, and anyone passionate about unlocking the true power of teams.
We're your hosts, Georgina
and Allard,
here to journey with you through transformational insights on how to coach teams with presence, depth, and emergence.
Let's explore not just the tools, but the art of transforming teams. In today's episode, I'm joined by Nick and Henrik. Nick is the co-founder of various businesses in the field of learning and development, namely EC to Learn and Skillful Collaboration. And my good friend Henrik is the founder of True Work and works with a team of international team coaches out there in the corporate world, both very successful practitioners. And in today's episode, we look at how different models and frameworks, when held lightly, can help us design very skillful interventions in the moment as a team coach. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Thank you, Nick and Henrik. Let's listen in. Right. Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Teams Transformed podcast. My name is Allard, and today we're here with Nick and Henrik. The three of us go by the name of the Gentlemen's Club.
Hello.
Hi there. How are you both?
Nick, how are you doing?
No, I'm really good. Yeah, I'm sat in Utrecht in the Netherlands. The sun is shining. Talking to you guys. Yeah, I'm really good. Thanks.
Yeah. And where are you at today, Henrik?
I'm in Hamburg, in my basement. No sun shining, but still happy.
Oh, good. And I'm joining you from Switzerland today. So you three different countries, three different team coaches. This is bound to be an interesting conversation. Thanks very much for accepting the invitation to join us. I think the last time we saw each other was in December, right? At that
in London,
at a workshop in London, and I'm sure a lot of things have happened since then. And really, I'm just very curious today, and people listening to this are curious about your practice, your team coaching practice, and specifically. We framed this series as moments of emergence. So it's really looking at our practice through a lens of what happens when what happens when all our good plans fail, and what happens when something unexpected happens in team coaching. How do we roll with the punches? How do we go with the flow? And how do we show up emergently, rather than in a diagnostic kind of pre-planned, pre-formatted, one-size-fits-all approach to helping teams develop. So, when you hear me say that, is there something specific that comes to your mind?
By the way, when you say that, this question, what comes up for you when you hear me say that? This I learned from you, this question. So whenever I say that, I hear your voice. So I love that question. So obviously, Nick and I, we prepared for this and had a reflection together. And we have had a shared experience. We thought this might be the best example because we were together in a workshop of one of our clients, a big corporate with a board member and her big team, like Nick, how many people? Like 10 people in the room, plus us.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of a reforming of the team, some old members, but many new members, and also the leader. And we worked with them for 2 days, and that was quite emergent. And there were moments of emergence and surprises. And maybe we speak about that. What do you think, Al?
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that, and maybe unpack it a bit with you and see what you guys learned from it, and what people listening to the podcast may possibly learn from it as well.
And maybe the extra thing to add is that it was kind of the first time that myself and Henrik had sat together, worked together with a team in a room. So there was also the emergence of the two of us working together for the first time with a client.
So just to clarify, you both have your individual practices. Henrik, you run this thing called True Work, right? And Nick, you're all about skillful collaboration.
So Henrik's True Work is a network of team coaches, and I'm part of that network. So Henrik invites people from the network to join him at his clients. And I've got two businesses. I've got IC to Learn, which is a where I work customized with clients, team coaching and individual coaching. And then I've got Skillful Collaboration, which is a kind of an off-the-shelf learning program that teams can go through together to learn how to collaborate together.
Great, and we'll put links to all of that in the show notes for people to find out more. So so interesting. Sorry I interrupted you, but so this was the first time that you co-coached.
We must say we co-coached during our diploma at Team Coaching Studio for a while. So on our team project, we were coaching together and we enjoyed it so much that we kept in touch, continued to speak. And then at some point, I had this opportunity at one of my clients to bring along Nick. And it was our first experience in real life. And also for the client, it was kind of the first moment they got together in this new constellation. So it was all about newness, emergence, beginnings. And we were in a nice venue in southern Germany in the nature. And I was very impressed by Nick's way to connect with people. So like with almost everybody that he met, he had like a shared, like either he came from the same city or they played soccer or whatever. So it was really interesting to observe Nick connecting with everybody right away. So that made me feel very comfortable because I knew the client before, but so we were ready to go. And on the first day, shall I continue, Nick? Shall I say a bit and then you come with the thing?
Yeah, maybe I jump in a little bit about. So we talk about emergent team coaching, and we're going to get to that in this. But actually, we'd been asked to be with the client for 2 days, and we designed those 2 days together, right? So there was also some facilitation in the roles and the hats that we were putting on in those 2 days. Right? So I just want to name that this wasn't 2 days of pure team coaching. There was quite some facilitation as well.
Yeah. Good point. And it doesn't have to be, right, 2 days of pure team coaching. It often is a mix of things, and looking for opportunities to do some proper team coaching in the midst of all that is a great way to get going with many teams.
And in particular, at the beginning of such a journey with a team, right? I guess it's only natural that you, on the one hand side, give them comfort by facilitating, and you need to ramp them up first and get them going in order to move more towards pure team coaching. At least this was our perception. People, I think, if I recall it correctly, some people met in that room for the first time in real life. They had seen each other maybe once or twice on the screen. So it was really a fresh start. And this is how we also created it. So we started, if I remember correctly, with image cards, doing a check-in for everybody to arrive, to introduce themselves a bit and connect. And there was this moment, Nick, when was it? On the second day in the morning, right?
I remember what we did the first afternoon. That was to ask these guys who all arrived. They're all vice presidents and they're all strong advocates for their roles, right? For their different departments. And we had them work together on the interdependencies. So what do you guys have to decide together? Where are you going to actually work together? So rather than your separate departments, what tasks and what decisions are you going to make together? And that was quite a so that first afternoon, Henrik, that was already quite a task for them, right? To kind of get into that and to see what emerged for, hey, actually what's mine and what's the subgroups and what's the duos and what's the whole team. So we kind of got into that confusion the first afternoon, didn't we?
Yeah. And there were many overlaps. There was new functions created. So there were many overlaps and people asked themselves, so this new person, what is she doing and what do I stop doing? And she was probably coming from the perspective of, so what is my territory here? Like, what is my role? And so there was a lot of things unsaid, tension, excitement as well, but we could also sense there is a lot of stuff ongoing and a lot of unclarity.
So definitely something there about interdependencies and newcomers. Was there a proper brief, so to speak, at the outset of this?
Proper? What do you?
Well, like what was the contract? What did they? Yeah. What in the client's mind were you there, or in your mind, what were you there to do?
Yeah, well, the brief was we need to form, we need to connect as a team, grow together as a team, like doing one step towards becoming a team, getting to know each other, creating some kind of psychological safety, building trust. So rather the beginnings. And there was something around, as Nick said, what are our interdependencies? What are our roles? So there was some expectations around that. And and having some fun together. And so the first day, as Nick said, was they made progress. They were working on interdependencies, identifying why are we here? What kind of team are we? Evening was very nice, exciting, tobogganing downhill in the snow. That was pretty cool and a lot of fun. And then the next morning, that was probably the moment that we would like to share, because we had the feeling they were doing this check-in, talking about things, but they weren't getting anywhere. So if you were thinking of Kantor's 4-player model, there were probably a lot of moves, but that's about it. And Nick and I, we became, and we shared this, we became impatient, but also uncertain, like what the hell is going on and how do we, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, I can echo what Henrik said. So we were, second morning, we were sat together in a circle, you know, and we had all picture cards on the floor and emotions cards, and it was a check-in, you know. How are you feeling? You know, what's emerging in the team, and then you share that with 12 people, and some people did talk about their emotions. Other people were talking about what they wanted to get on with, you know. But there was a lot of moves, like Henrik said. There was a lot of advocating the department, so advocating this is what we should do. And that was kind of going round in circles, right? It was kind of going round in circles, and nobody's sure of who's going to make the decision on what we do next.
So just to interject real quick, let me see if I remember this correctly. But so when you mentioned that Kantor model, just maybe some people have not heard of it, but so I think Kantor identified 4 different roles, right? 4 different ways one contributes to a conversation, and one is making moves, like you said, coming up with new ideas, and I think I should, you know, and here giving input, and then there's what the other ones were. The second one was either, you know, a follow, right? You can follow what somebody throws into the conversation, and then there was the oppose, like opposing what somebody suggests, and then the fourth role was the role of the bystander, right? Which kind of includes everything that's not included in those first 3.
Yeah.
And so normally in an effective conversation, you'd see a bit of all 4. Some moves, some opposes, some follows, and some bystanding. But so if I hear you correctly, in this case, it was like move. I make a move, you make a move. Somebody else makes a move, I make another move, and the other 3 roles were largely absent.
Yeah.
So a very skewed kind of conversation. And so you're listening into this and you're observing this, and it becomes very figural for you.
Yeah, and I mean, it's in the nature of probably a very new team. They haven't had this before, so they didn't have a mode of discussing properly or having a dialogue or whatever format you would think of. And so, as Nick said, there was no leadership in this moment. And so we were really tempted to go in the lead. Or I think we both had the same thought and were aligned on who should take the lead. And then Nick, what did you do then?
Well, first of all, I felt really uncomfortable. Right? And And that was really cool to sit next to Henrik. Because I'm sure if I'd been by myself, I would have said, "Okay, guys, this is where I propose that you go." I guess I would have done that. But we were sat together, and we were kind of also talking a little bit together about where this might go. And we offered that back to the team, right? We offered it back to the team, and specifically to the leader. We said, "Okay, we're observing this dynamic of this conversation going around in circles, and we're not going anywhere now." And we asked to the leader, how she was with that. I think that's what we asked, right, Henrik? Kind of what's coming up for her is what we asked, I think, or something like that.
Yes, exactly. So, and it was like, if you could see the change of atmosphere in the room, you would have right away seen like the tension going away. It was like a relief that suddenly, because everybody had kind of expected her to like, where are we going? What's happening? She was very leading from behind, letting go a lot, and it seemed that she needed some kind of spark to actually lean in, and then she did great. So, and we really had the feeling there was like such a shift in the atmosphere of relief, and finally we're moving. And I think that was really, so it was good that it was so turning in circles. So the pressure kind of built up, and it was really helpful. And then us helping her addressing it to her, and then she physically also, like she sat in a different way, like more straight, and then she started to address what she would expect, what should be done next, and where we should move. And then people were really following and listening, and it really, there was really a moment when we had the feeling that the whole energy shifted from turning into circles more towards an alignment.
How did the conversation change? How did it, where did it go from a conversation that was entirely characterized by those different moves that you outlined?
If I remember rightly, one of the images that we had on the floor, one of the picture cards, it was a hammer, just a hammer.
Yeah.
And with her check-in, she'd picked up this picture card that was 20 minutes before or half an hour before, and she was talking about how she'd like this team to break down the walls in the business to get across the silos. Yeah? That was her metaphor, right? And then it went round in circles. So just in their team, that was the metaphor was, well, we're not even breaking down the silos in this team, right? So what we did actually is we picked up this hammer card, and we gave that to the team lead. And we said, okay, if we take your metaphor of breaking down the walls, okay, if you're going to break the walls down of this team, to get across the team, what's your recommendation, or what's your advice, or where would you like to go? And then what stuck with me, and maybe this is my perception or something that I've maybe made up, Henrik. My impression that she's a really experienced, and I think a really brilliant leader. I think Henrik too. And my impression is in that confusion and in that uncomfortable part of that morning, my impression she was sat there, enjoying it, because I think she's experienced that you have to go through these uncomfortable moments to get over a bump with a team. So my impression is that she was kind of enjoying this clashing of let's go this way, let's go this way, let's go this way, let's go this way, up to a point where we invited her then to say, hey, okay, this has gone on long enough. Where shall we go?
Yeah, I would agree. I think she was very experienced, from what we think, really a role model leader. And yes, she mentioned that she likes this newness and this messiness, and then but she also, I think she had the same impulse when we were addressing her. She had, because it was so immediate that she moved. I had the impression she had been thinking about and also moving ahead. And Allard, how did it change? Well, we kind of brought this conversation to an end. So there was you could say there was a move, then there were follows, and then there was a bystand in terms of, okay, what should we do next? So there was a lot more coming in, if you think in Kantor. And then we moved on and we agreed on what to do next. And we then started to work in subgroups on different topics, brought them together, worked on a compelling purpose, if I remember it correctly. So did different things that were helpful for the team at the very beginning, and then agreed on how they should proceed. So this was really a shift in the dynamics of the workshop.
You know, one of the things I really like about this example, and thanks for sharing it, including the moments of discomfort, and keeping it real, because it can be really uncomfortable for us as interveners too, and what a privilege and what a luxury it is to have somebody that you do the work with, right, and not being alone. But one of the things I really like about this example is the fact that there is this framework, right? The Kantor framework, the Kantor model, Kantor, Kantor. If somebody wants to look it up, but how you hold it lightly in the back of your mind and how it helps you make meaning of what's happening, as opposed to bringing in a framework to a workshop, so to speak, and say, well, here's this particular framework, and now we're going to teach this framework to you, and then we're going to practice this framework, which I think would lead to a whole different kind of learning than in your example. Here the framework is present in your mind. You don't even have to mention it, right? You don't have to say, wow, this reminds me, let me tell you, but it's there. It helps you make meaning. It helps you see something, spot something. And therefore, it helps you design an intervention that really unlocks something and dramatically improves the quality of the conversation. Does that make sense? Or am I rambling on?
No, I think it makes total sense. And I mean, these were, as Nick already said, these were such senior people. It was also kind of intimidating to have like 10 of these very, very senior experienced people in there, and how to not being intimidated, not being not having our saboteurs become too loud. So in TCS, we call it self-management. So doing a lot of self-management there, but also using the partner to align and really, really act as a team there. This was really powerful. And that's why I'm so glad we were there, the two of us. And I think it's just how it should be, that you really work as a entity and really speak from this entity to the team and work with them. And by doing that, I think we were so strong, not in a leading way, but in creating authority, that, this was really, really helpful. And then we didn't need any concepts to show that we are so smart. I mean, we brought in some smart concepts later on, and we also mentioned it from Harvard. This probably helped, but when it comes to our work, they really followed us and appreciated us from the beginning. That was also probably based on Nick's connecting skills, but also just from how we both, and I think that's also very powerful, how we both interacted and role modeled, not being afraid of showing ourselves vulnerable by speaking in front of the group about how we should continue. I think that also helped a lot to ease the situation.
Well, if you think back, right, and maybe you already, to that moment, and if you think about the work, is it ongoing work with this client?
Kind of. Well, we've been working with them for a long time, but we haven't had a workshop lately, but we are in touch with the leader still. So they kind of try to also, in terms of budget, try to do their own thing for a while.
We were laughing last week, Allard, about the impact of our work with this team. And kind of towards the end of last year on LinkedIn, they won like 1,000 awards, or like tons and tons of awards. Like cross business awards and internal awards and all that stuff. I mean, and we were like, oh, well, that's thanks to our great work.
And great. And so they're winning lots of awards, and How would you, if you think about the journey that this team is on, right, as a team, what do you think they learned from that moment? What do you think the team is able to do now that they maybe weren't able to do before that particular moment that you just illustrated for us?
If I go back to the outcome then of when the team leader said, okay, then here's a couple of things we're going to work on together, right? After the uncomfortableness, she said, okay, let's go towards these two things. And then during the morning, actually, then we split into two subgroups. Yeah? And Henrik went with one subgroup and I went with the another subgroup. And they were a real mix of the newcomers and the people who'd been in the business for a long time.
Yeah.
So basically what that moment allowed us to separate into subgroups, which is interdependent, right? A group of you are going to work over there, a group of you are going to work over there on two tasks. And it allowed them to practice. It allowed them then to practice working together. And I was with one subgroup and Henrik was with the other. So we were then coaching those subgroups. And then we came back together and kind of did a plenary of what had the two subgroups done working together. And I have a feeling that probably helped them going forward, that we don't have to do everything as a full team. We can also split into subgroups and use our skills with the subgroups. So that's kind of one of the things that I think probably helped in coming out of that moment as well.
Yeah, and I would add, like, what you asked, what they took away or what was different afterwards. Again, it was a very reforming situation. So with new players in there, with a high expertise from external organizations coming in. So there was a lot of expectations as well. And so to form them, like doing some kind of bringing them together as a new entity, that was the newness for sure. And also to speak up. So we had the impression that by the second day, the afternoon, they were opening up much, much more than at the beginning. And so feeling definitely more safe and also speaking up and also a bit more controversy. So we had that also in the subgroups, that there was controversy coming up, and it was very helpful and healthy to have that. And still being connected to the team, we know also that there had been moves, like people leaving and coming in. So that I think that also created some kind of transparency, what the team needs and what might be in the way of the team. So we had the feeling there was a polarization and there was an acceleration of the team process through those 2 days.
Yeah, man, I wouldn't be surprised that the next time they have a conversation and that same dynamic kind of happens in the conversation, they'll recognize it themselves, no? And be able to snap out of it quicker than they were before that. Yeah, again, it's a lovely example of how you were really present to to the dynamics, to what was happening in the team, and that you mustered enough, insight and courage, to share that with the team, put it out there, make it figural for the team, raise some awareness around that particular dynamic, and help them move through it and help them learn from it, as opposed to being, so wed, so attached to a particular agenda in where you might not even have noticed it, or as opposed to a facilitative approach, which where maybe you would have intervened and said, well, I'm going to make a suggestion, I'm going to take us out of this because we're going around in circles. Let me tell you what we're going to do, which would have led, I think, to a lot, to less learning. So well done, and thank you for sharing this particular example.
I want to share one other thing, if I can, Al, and that was something that Henrik does brilliantly. Is that so when you're working with a full team and then you've got a break, then Henrik would go and talk to one of the team members, and share his experience of how that person's showing up, and then when that person comes back to the team, what I experienced is there was a shift in how that person came back into the team, showed up back into the team. So that's a beautiful example as well of when you're working with a team, you can also help individuals to develop.
A little bit of on the spot, one-on-one coaching there as part of a team coaching intervention.
Obviously, I have no idea, but it's good to hear that.
You didn't know you did that, Henrik?
Well, I think Nick told me already that sometimes I do that, and I asked for permission, I hope, but I love to give feedback right away on the spot, and usually in a very supportive way. And it's again in a systemic view. If you help somebody show up differently right away, it can have an impact on the whole team and people. In particular, if there's a new team coming together, there's people with all their hypotheses and limiting beliefs and saboteurs, the dancing tango, and then it can be helpful to mirror back something, and then people gaining so much more clarity or connecting back to themselves and showing up more authentic, and then this has an impact on the others doing the same. So I think this was probably the effect then.
Yeah, thanks for throwing that in there, Nick, and thanks for and thanks for the teaching there, Henrik. We have to conclude our session for today, but I feel that we could almost do a whole separate session on that last point. So maybe we'll have to invite you again.
With pleasure.
Okay. Well, for now, thank you, Henrik. Thank you, Nick, for being here, for taking the time. I know that you're super busy. Good luck with the ongoing assignments, the ongoing missions. I'm sure we'll speak soon in one way or another.
Latest in summer camp.
Right, that's right. At the summer retreat. Yeah, looking forward to that in July.
Thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah, it was nice to be with you guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you. See you soon, gentlemen. Thanks for joining today's journey of Teams Transformed.
If this sparked a new insight or a deeper question, we invite you to sit with it, not to solve it, but to let it unfold.
For resources, community, and reflection prompts, visit teamcoachingstudio.com.
Until the next time, stay present, stay curious, and keep leaning into the art of emergence.